Welcome back to Somewhere on the Spectrum, Navigating the World of Autism. I'm Sherry Dixon, your host, and I want to say I am so proud of all of the work everyone on this team is doing. And I hope that you are getting exactly what we set out to do. A little bit of information that, if nothing else, helps you know that you're not alone in this journey, but more importantly, lets you know that there's many people going through the same struggles, the same wonderings, have the same questions. They're coming out on the other side, and that's why we're coming to you so that you can receive that knowledge, wisdom, and those experiences to help you on your journey. Last week, we spoke about elementary school years, early childhood years, and that's kind of where my experience fell when it came to working with families of students that were diagnosed on the spectrum. I did not ever take on a school at the secondary level, mainly because middle school children lose their minds, period. That's always been my philosophy. And as a mama, I know that's accurate. And I know I probably did too when I was a kid. But more importantly, I would hear families say so many times, Miss Dixon, can we just stay with you? Can you just keep them one more year? Because there's so much unknown when it comes to secondary living, secondary schooling, secondary worlds. I have colleagues that worked in those areas, and I know that structures change quite a bit within the school systems when you go from being in one class or maybe one or two classes all day with the different supports that come in and out, or maybe your child is in a place where they needed to be in a separate class and just spent a little bit of time going in and out, to where the structure changes so much that they're going to multiple teachers throughout the day if they're at that level, or spend less time out into the general education classes. I can't even imagine the complexity of working through those processes, both from a parent side and from a principal side. But I do know this, the more everybody works together, the more we give each other grace to be able to try some things, figure it out, maybe make adjustments if needed, and try something new, the better the outcome will be. On today's episode, you're going to hear from a couple of different people, actually 3 different groups that have just lit up my heart, have just set it on fire, because they've become friends, I have to say, not just team members, but friends. 2 of our parents will be joining us. Molly Smith, who you met in last week's episode, she'll be joining us with her son, Graham. He's 17, ending his junior year in high school, getting ready to be a senior and thinking about what's going to come next. In addition, we have Christy Dunaway, who lives right here in my area, and she's going to talk about her unique story, because as a mom, she didn't get the diagnosis for her daughter until high school. And that's just a different kind of journey than most. In addition to having Christy on, Christy's daughter, Amelia, who is a student at Texas A&M, will be joining us, talking about the journey through her lens, which is a little different, but also so many similarities as her mom had. I do want to preface everything with this. In order to make this film, doable. We needed to talk with people that were, number one, agreeable to come on board, and number two, could actually hold the conversations with us. I know, and I'm not somebody that only sees the brighter side of things. I know that there are many, many people in the world of neurodiversity all along the spectrum. I want you to know, if we're not highlighting situations that are similar to yours, maybe your child is at a different level than these few that we are highlighting, I don't want you to feel that you're being isolated. We just were not able to have conversations with some of those children and some of those families. But we know that that's part of the complexity of this diagnosis, is that we have so many different levels. And Christy said it best to me, one of our guests this week. She posted something on Facebook and we were talking about it during her interview. And she said, I posted, if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. And I think that that says it best. We could have children the exact same age, growing up in the exact same neighborhood, both on the spectrum, but could have completely different needs. She also talks a lot about the need for advocacy, which led me to remind everybody how important it is to form that relationship with your school. Secondary schools are different in so many ways, as I mentioned, and one of those ways can be the parent involvement. Parents tend to not be as involved with going to specific things at schools when children get to middle school and high school. It's a trend all over the United States, probably all over the world, because children are becoming more independent. They don't hold the same kind of activities, the read to your child tonight, because we're not typically doing that at middle schools and high schools. However, just because the events are not there, that does not mean that you don't have the opportunity to get to know your child's teachers, to form that partnership. And yes, your teachers should be reaching out. So teachers and administrators out there, remember that. But if they're not, as a parent, you have that right to form that relationship. Because if I do know anything, open communication, working together as a team, did allow us to have the level of success that we did with our students and our families at elementary. And if we could just duplicate that going into your middle schools and high schools, I think we would see a completely different trajectory for our students, no matter what level they are on. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some great schools out there doing this. There are some great families out there doing this, and you might be one of them. But for those of you who feel hesitant, for those of you who are unsure of what to expect because it's so different, or even maybe for those of you who had some challenging experiences when you were a student and you tend to shy away from going to the school, because I know you're out there. I have family members that were just in that same situation, and I tell them the same thing. You are on a path together. That's why you have your yearly special education meetings or your yearly 504 meetings. That's why when each new school year starts, you have some kind of gathering, right? Bring your backpacks, come to school, find your locker, whatever it is at the middle schools and high schools, but you still have them. Get to know those people, because I think that that will be one of your keys to success, navigating the world of autism through secondary schools. All right, you've heard me speak long enough. Again, I can't say enough about our guests this week, and I cannot wait for you to meet them. First up, you'll hear from one of our moms, Christy Dunaway, and she will talk to you about her very unique journey navigating the world of autism. All right, everyone. Christy, thank you for joining me once again.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. And as we move into this episode, we're really talking about how children navigate through secondary schools.
Right.
And we know middle school children totally lose their minds. So it's really hard sometimes to know, is this a unique characteristic of this child just because they're moving into their teenage years? Or
Right.
is this a unique characteristic of my child because something might be different?
Right.
And so it's really hard in middle schools, and that's why I never became a middle school principal, to even really kind of put children on that right path as they start to become more independent.
Okay.
But you've gone through having children in middle school and high school.
Yes.
And your daughter, Amelia, is on the spectrum.
She is.
And I think y'all have a pretty unique story. So why don't you start by just sharing your journey?
Okay. Well, my daughter Amelia, she's 18 now. She is attending A&M University for, let me get this right, the cognitive and behavioral neuroscience major. So
And she's very specific about
yes,
that.
because that means no med school. Yay for me. Anyway, she gives me the best stories. And so as I think about what we've gone through with her, she was 15 when I really figured out that this was something more than her just being a little quirky or different. I think leading up into that point, there were lots of little things along the way from the time she was little and to that point. But there was just nothing glaring that I knew to look for. And so I think with Amelia, I think one of the greatest things about working with her is she's a willing participant. And I know not all autistics in their teens are. I get that. Well, heck, some adults even, right? I've heard. But she is.
From younger children.
Yes,
too.
exactly. She's a very willing participant. She always wants to do life a little bit better. She always wants to get it right. And I think that's what's, it hindered me knowing what was wrong because she was able to mask through it, just trying to mimic what the responses I wanted from her. So
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
It's kind of interesting as we've moved forward through all of that. When we realized that this was just a little bit more than what we thought, it opened up our eyes to an entire world of things I didn't know to look for them. So I think it's been fun. It's been challenging, but I am grateful and I feel so blessed by God that I have a daughter that is my very best friend and just wants to walk along this journey together to get her to be the best adult that she can be. It's, I know not everybody has that experience, but I'm grateful that that's been mine.
Yeah, and she is a delight, and she's going to be on the show a little bit later today. And I know that you're going to be very proud of the work that she does, even now and in the future. And she is very high functioning.
Yes.
She's on that higher end of the spectrum, can do academics well.
She's brilliant.
And so I'm sure that masks some of it.
Oh, so much.
Also.
Yeah, very much so. She really took to school. I mean, I think even from when she was probably 2, I remember her learning to memorize books. Even though she couldn't read the words, she had memorized the books by listening to me and could just go through the books and recite them all back to me at 2.
Wow.
And so I knew early on that her ability to memorize patterns was very high. So I had no concept that could be a symptom of anything. I was just like, she's a perfectionist. She likes to memorize everything. She loves puzzles. She loves,
Wow.
So yeah.
Interesting.
You're right.
So what was the turning point?
The turning point of like when we figured out that there was something amiss, as I look back through the years, I can see all of these things, but I don't think that I didn't put it all together and nobody told me to look for it. Right.
Right.
Okay.
And to be honest, there's not a lot of education out for parents that this could even be a possibility.
No, especially because on this level. So with autism, there's 3 different levels. The DSM-5, I think it's called. is there's a level 1, a level 2, and level 3. They
Mhm.
no longer have low or high functioning autism.
And it changes all the
It
time.
does. We
Yes.
call it that because that's what we grew up knowing it
Right,
as.
right.
But she's a level 1, so she needs some support.
Mhm.
And I think the turning point was seeing her starting to go through middle school. I know middle school is rough, guys. I know it is. I have 2 kids, got them both through middle school. I get it. And their hormones all over the place is something
Mhm.
that I felt was a little normal. But that moment, it was in high school, honestly. I remember we were on vacation and she's sitting out by the pool with another friend of hers, which go figure, we now figured out he's on the spectrum. He just got diagnosed at 19.
Wow,
Um,
wow.
and she's sitting by the pool with a friend of hers, and there was a bee or a wasp or something, maybe about 50 feet away. Okay.
Okay.
And the friend knows that she's a little bit afraid of them and says, hey, just so you know, there's a wasp over there. So you can kind of, he was trying to help her out. Well, she jumped into the water fully clothed.
Wow.
And of course, he jumped in after her, pulled her out. She's sobbing. I see it going on from across the way. And this was the middle of summer break. And I was like, what just happened?
Hmm.
And I think at that very moment, like her entire life leading up into that point just kind of flashed before me, and all the pieces, because she was in therapy for some OCD behaviors, some anxiety behaviors. But that's all. We just thought
Mhm.
she's, got some OCD, got some anxiety, but beyond that, we didn't know that there was anything else. And I'm like, there's something here.
Mhm.
And so I just so happened to have a phone call with her therapist because we met every 3 months just to see how she was doing. And Amelia was totally fine with that. And I was telling the therapist what had happened the day before. And I said, is there any possibility she might be on the spectrum for autism? And she said, that's funny. On my last phone call with her, she asked me the same question. And I said, oh my gosh, how did I miss this? Now, of course, the therapist is like, I'm not qualified to do that
Mhm.
kind of diagnosis, but here's where you can go as an actual psychologist
Mhm.
to have it evaluated. But I think it was that moment when I'm looking around at all the other 15 and 16-year-olds and seeing that she's still socially behaving like an 8-year-old
Mhm.
and still enjoying that parallel play, still daydreaming, walking around the pool, like still carrying her stuffed animals when we go on vacation, like still watching cartoons. Some of that stuff might seem normal, but when you put it all together,
Mhm.
the food
Mhm.
aversions, the noise
Mhm.
sensitivity, she could look at you in the eye for a little while. So you wouldn't have caught it like that.
Mhm.
She loves hugs. Oh my God, the tighter the hug, the better. So again, all these typical things where they're like, oh, well, they look at you in the eye and they like hugs, so they can't be autistic. That's not true. It's actually
Mhm.
not how it works. So I think that moment of her jumping in the pool fully clothed when she's 15 years old over a wasp that's 50 feet away.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Kind of a
think
trigger, right?
it was just, as a mom, there's just that moment where you're
Mhm.
like, okay, enough. Something is wrong. And we went from there to seek the diagnosis, or to just to seek what
What's
was
going
going
on?
on.
Mhm.
But that was my first instinct. So
So I have to say this, one thing that I've noticed, and we haven't known each other a really long time, but we have had interactions
Yeah.
in person, and I've met Amelia,
Yeah.
of course, only online.
right.
Can't wait to
Oh,
meet
yeah,
her in
you met her in
person.
person?
I
Yeah,
have not.
okay,
I
we'll make
have
that
not.
happen. We'll make that happen.
But a lot of times what I saw as an elementary principal is that parents kind of had this feel of, oh no, my child's life is going to be different now. And I
Mm.
don't know if that's what I want.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yes. And I can only imagine being at the high school level, there may have been some thoughts of now what happens.
Mm.
And looking from the outside in, I have to commend you because I feel like both of you, as you talk about everything that you have with me, it feels as if you've embraced this and you almost feel like, okay, now we can make a plan.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I wasn't there with when the diagnosis happened, but did you all feel any of that?
So it's interesting you put it that way because, Amelia would say, I know that they're making fun of me, but I don't know why. So their life is already different. So if you think, well, I don't want that label on them, or I don't want their life, it already is there.
Mhm.
It's already
That's a
there.
good point.
So you're not doing anything other than now getting them the support that they need.
Mhm.
So for us, it was a relief. For Amelia, I asked her the day that
Mhm.
she got the official diagnosis. She had just turned 16 because it took a while to go through all of those
Mhm.
things. And I said, "Well, how do you feel about that, honey?" And she said, "I'm relieved. I'm not just weird and difficult. Like there's a reason for it. And now I can start finding tools for people like me so that I can help navigate."
Mhm.
So if you ever feel that way, I want you just to remember that their life's already different. They're already being labeled, but they're being labeled different, weird, difficult, obsessive, enter your, whatever your adjective.
Mhm.
Um, I think that you're doing them a disservice by not letting them know as soon as possible. I've seen some moms like, well, I don't know if he's ready to know that yet. The moment he can understand or she can understand what it is, they're ready to know.
Mhm. That's such a valid point, and I think that those are hard conversations as parents we have to have with ourselves. But I always felt like this too, as a principal and as a mom. My child is very unique in and of itself.
Yes.
Her spectrum is a little different.
Uh-huh.
She's a gifted and talented kid, and
Mhm.
so she's kind of creative and out there,
Yeah.
but very many similarities. However, I would see this a lot as a principal. To be completely honest, running a school was difficult because, and I have to share this, every kid is unique in some kind of way.
All of them.
And even when you're thinking, okay, I'm going to teach this lesson in a classroom, you can't just teach that lesson in a classroom because you're having to differentiate it for
Yeah.
so many different levels,
Yeah.
so many different personalities. And so I'm hoping that by us having conversations like this, putting this out in the world, everybody starts to just remember we're all unique. We're all supposed to be unique
Yes, that's on purpose.
because that's what makes the world a better place.
Yeah.
And then having that empathy and learning how to work together, come together. One thing Amelia mentioned to me when I first met her was that she felt like her schools have always accommodated her.
She's absolutely right. I have to say that schools we were in at the time absolutely did an amazing job before we even had a 504 in place. Because we did get a 504 in place after that. We didn't need the IEP because academically she was fine. But even before that, I think because she was such an agreeable child and she was such a high achiever, they were
Mhm.
willing to do whatever it took to help her, give her what she needed. But that 504 really did make a huge difference in her ability to get through a day without a meltdown.
Mhm.
So I think even if your schools are already helping,
Mhm.
that 504 will actually just give them, I always look at it like she didn't need a ladder. She needed a few little stepping stones, a
Mhm.
little thing, couple little things just to grab onto, and then she could just roll with it like everybody else.
I like that analogy. And of course, we're going to have all different levels,
Oh
right?
yeah. I mean,
And
there's
it's
so
going to
many.
look different.
Absolutely.
And schools are not perfect places either, and they're gonna
Run
make.
by imperfect human beings.
Exactly. Our principals are not perfect. We're pretty close, but not quite. But I say all that to say, I think one of the most important things that I kept hearing from you and from some of our other parents, talking to them, staying in contact with the school.
Oh yeah. They knew me quite well.
Yes, and knowing that it's a team,
Yeah.
that nobody's gonna be perfect,
No.
that there's gonna be trial and error,
Mhm.
but everybody's gonna do their best, so.
I agree. I think the biggest thing that we learned throughout her middle school and high school years, as far as working with the schools, was that I didn't come after the schools like they were doing something wrong. I came to them like, how can we work together
Mhm.
to help her get where she needs to go? And they were amazing. They really were. I really did have a good experience with all of it, even through COVID. During that time when she was at home, um, watching the schools kind of work with her. It was it was really good. I know not everybody has that experience, but
Right, right.
I'm grateful that we did.
And so I think one of the great messages from this conversation, of course, is stay in contact with your schools.
Mm.
And for school leaders out there, teachers out there, superintendents, directors, any positions that you have in a school system, embrace working with families as much as possible. I know I can say for myself, when I worked, in the schools, forming that partnership was a priority to me.
Yes.
And it was for every family, but especially families that had more need maybe
Mhm.
than others, because we're all learning. And I said something to someone earlier today. My child might be diagnosed and your child might be diagnosed, and they might be the same age, maybe even have the same birth month,
Yeah.
have the same hair color, same height,
Yes.
but they're two totally different places on the spectrum.
Right.
And that's what makes it so confusing.
Well, I think somebody said this to me, I can't claim it, but that if you've met one person on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, you've met one person on the autism
Yes,
spectrum,
absolutely.
because they are all different. That's why it's a spectrum. It's like a
Mhm.
color wheel. It's not linear. So
Mhm.
just know, yeah, you're going to see some that barely can speak at all, or maybe speak at like a 4-year-old level. And then
Mhm.
you're going to have some like my daughter that can out research everybody in the room, but may not remember to take a shower. Like
Right, yeah.
it's such a different way of seeing people, that I think you start realizing that they all need help in a very specific way. And we can provide that help if we just will take a minute to understand what they need the help with. And I feel like the school was
Mhm.
kind of like that in
Mhm.
classroom. She needed to walk out because there was too much cursing going on with the boys in the back of the room, or there was,
Mhm.
too many loud noises going on. They would let her, that the 504 would allow her to walk outside the classroom and take a break and gather herself, versus making her sit through it. So
Mhm.
it's even in college, they've been very accommodating.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because she's coming back on next week as well
She
for
is.
our young adult edition.
Oh, yay.
And
It's definitely been an experience.
yes, I'm excited to hear, because as you mentioned earlier, she actually is a student at Texas A&M.
Is.
And if you know anything about that, it's not an easy university to get into.
And she is learning how hard it is to even be there.
I am sure. And so stay tuned for
Yes.
that. And Christy, thank you so much for
Oh.
coming on and being a part of this, because again, our main objective is just to share these stories
Yeah.
with families and help them know that it's okay.
Yeah.
One way or the other, everything is going to get figured out.
And keep advocating. Let me just leave with
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Keep
yeah.
advocating for your kids. If your doctors and providers are kind of putting you off and brushing you aside, keep advocating. I think I can't speak that strongly enough. Like, keep advocating for your kids. If that one's not listening, go find another doctor, because they don't all know what this spectrum really looks like we do.
Mhm. Mhm. I like that. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, welcome back, Molly. I'm so excited to see you again.
Glad to be here.
And you have a special guest with you today.
I do. This is my sweet son Graham. He's 17.
Yeah.
Graham, I'm so excited for you to be part of our show and to share your journey with our audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Super. All right, so we'll get started. Molly, thank you again for coming back. I know you had so much insight to share with the audience from episode number 2, talking about elementary years, as you all started your journey with working through navigating the world of autism. And now your son is getting ready for a big milestone.
Yes.
Yes. Graham, you're going to be a senior in high school next year.
Yep.
Are you
Almost
excited?
there. Yep.
I'm excited for you. I remember my senior year. It was a long time ago, but it was fabulous. I have to tell you that. It really was. So, having said that, I'm going to turn it over to you two. Tell us a little bit about your journey. We're talking a lot about secondary schooling during this episode. So your journey through middle school, high school, we all know middle school kids just kind of lose their mind anyway.
Oh
So,
yeah, it's all
yeah, we're all a little unique in middle school, but as we start to get into high school, things start to change a little bit. But I really want to hear y'all's journey and how it's been for the two of you going through these years of school.
Yeah. Well, I would say, just to set this up a little bit, in our elementary experience, we had just phenomenal teachers and admin and staff and all of that. And I was nervous about going into middle school, because like you
Mhm.
said, like middle school is just like everybody kind of loses their minds in middle school, right? The pandemic was happening around then as well, so we had that to contend with. Yeah. And then in high school, so middle school was actually, from a parent's perspective, middle school actually was pretty good. High school, we've seen, some things come up, but I think Graham has really navigated it pretty well. What's your perspective?
Oh, for middle school. So yeah, in the first, so there's like, I mean, okay, so it's usually 2 years. There's the first and the second
Yeah.
year, and then you're just out. You just go to the high school,
Yeah.
and all that. The first year was pretty interesting experience. I guess there was a really big change. A lot of kids started doing a lot of things adults usually told you not to do in elementary school. Even if you didn't do it, you literally just see other people doing it, and it's so overwhelming. You wonder how many times you have to tell someone. So, and the ending of that was a bit dramatic, but we actually, in between that, we were like, oh wait, it's 2020 and there's COVID. And so the first few weeks of 8th grade were outside of school. And it turns out I actually got to meet some people there that honestly kind of just vibed in the comfort zone, or I guess brought it with them everywhere they went.
So you made good friends in middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually a lot that are still my friends today. Like they've actually just gone all the way. And it's awesome.
What about high school?
High school, so yeah, freshman year was a lot of things. Everything's a lot of things at this point. So in general, I guess being a freshman was kind of something. The freshman center was separated from the high school in general, though, so all the 9th graders were just in the same building. It was so there's that. Which was probably for the better because I know that a lot of things could happen in both schools, I guess. I guess there were a lot of old peers I see here and there that I knew very well in elementary school, or at least had a good relationship or just fun with. Unfortunately, if I didn't really see them during middle school, which I really didn't for some of them, we just kind of grew apart and they changed. And that wasn't necessarily bad, but it was like a paradox. You knew this person, you really want to talk to them. It's not like talking to a stranger, but you don't know how much they've changed. So you're kind of slammed with that sometimes.
I'll say too that like the school district we're in is very big.
Oh,
so
it's big.
These classes, Graham's class is 1,700 kids in it, and so kids that he spent 6 years, our elementary goes K to 6, spent 6 years with in a smaller environment. You got to know those kids, but once you got into the freshman center and then into high school, you are with multiple, like hundreds and hundreds of other kids, and everybody's kind of finding what they're interested in, right? So the people that you ran with in elementary school, the relationships just changed.
So even in a freshman center, even if it was just one grade put into one building, it was so many middle schools technically joined up together.
Yeah.
A lot of people appeared to assimilate into other groups. Almost like robots. I didn't really find mines. I did have a few friends that stacked up from theirs and was just really pleasant to talk to sometimes. Freshman year, I didn't experience a lot of that though, but sophomore year is when a lot of things changed. So sophomores through seniors, which is like 10th or 12th, they'd be like in the bigger building. Oh, it's a bigger building. So it's away from all the freshmen who are infamous for things I don't know about. It's a high school thing, I don't know. So there's even more groups, and the clubs are all about there. They're often after school though.
What clubs are you in?
There's animation club, which was an interesting one. A lot of people seem very enthusiastic to create things there.
Yeah.
And generally just gave that advice or reception.
Yeah.
Other club would be Bible club. I didn't join that until a bit later. I didn't know it existed. I knew it turns out I actually met a lot of people that were from there, and they were really awesome to talk to because they didn't put their expectations directly onto the conversation about me, so I could actually talk to them freely.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the more accelerated, like good relationships. Like it happened really quick, but it was still very strong.
So you're bringing some pretty important information to this conversation, and I know we kind of planned out what we were going to talk about, but from what I'm hearing, and Molly, I'll start with something you said.
Yeah.
You said, I was worried about the transition from elementary on. And I heard that from so many parents as a principal. They would come to me at the end of 5th grade and they would literally
Yes.
sometimes say, can you just keep them? Can you just keep them? And I would say, no, baby, we cannot keep your child here. We don't have a parking lot. They can't be 16 and still going to school here.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a little bit of a joke, but I know that that is a concern because elementaries, you know, are so structured in a different way to nurture and build and grow. So I know that that seems to be a concern of a lot of families making the change in structure. But I also, Graham, I heard you talk a lot about just making the transitions and finding your place and understanding where you fit in, because people do change over the years, right? And I'll be honest with you, I remember going to elementary school with some kids. I moved my 6th grade year to another school in the same district, but a different school. And then we all came back together in high school. And I even felt the same, you know? So I think that that's something that's pretty normal, pretty typical to be feeling like, wow, do we still have conversations? Are they still the same? But understanding what you said, you see kids doing some things that maybe they shouldn't be doing, and being aware that you don't want to be out of path with those students. I really commend you, because that's hard for a lot of kids to do. And it sounds like you were self-aware enough to know, I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. Let me go find my new group of people getting into the clubs and the different things. So I think that that's pretty amazing. Molly, I'm sure that as a parent, you probably felt him going into high school, especially after the pandemic. You're so much more independent at high school, right? And the teachers don't guide quite as much, and they're not there quite as much. But what do you think the school, if you were to say something that schools do that's pretty good about keeping an eye on you know, students that are on the spectrum, to make sure that they are making good choices? Because I'm sure that that's a big concern.
Yeah, for sure. And especially in a school as large, in a district as large as ours, the way they have it structured, I mean, obviously we have an IEP that, and his goals on his IEP for the last several years have been very, very basic, right? But we've got a good group of people on his art committee and talking through some of those things. Also, the other piece is, because of the size of the school, they have smaller little units inside, and each unit has a principal, has a counselor, and all of that. And so they stay with the kids through the years. So we built relationships. And so when we've had problems like this earlier this year with bullying and that type of thing, like, I could go directly to them and they've been very responsive, and so forth. The other thing, and this is a thing that I've learned, you know, Graham is my second child. I did not know, a lot of parents don't know what they're doing with their first kid. Like, it's like trial by fire, right? And one of the things that I know, right? So, but one of the things that we have been trying to do specifically with Graham is advocate for himself. So if there's a missed assignment, or if there's a grade or whatever, like, Graham is very on top of his schoolwork. He holds himself to probably too high of a standard, right? Yeah. And so it's like, when something comes up, it's like, okay, what can you do? Like, do you know what your next step is? If not, then let's brainstorm those steps and then go take them. And so helping him advocate for himself. And then as a parent, coming around behind that to say, like, to connect with that teacher to say, you know, he should have reached out to you, and so forth. So I do, especially with a handful of teachers, we've forged a really good relationship with those teachers over the years. Not every single one every year, but in those content areas. I mean, you know, Graham's doing pre-cal and physics and, you know, all of these things, like classes I never took, you know. And so it's like, okay, I know, thanks, babe. How give those opportunities to help him advocate for himself, because he's going to have to do it the rest of his life. So you might as well start now, when you're tethered really close to home.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, because our conversation during the elementary years, you spoke about how important it is to have that relationship with the teachers and
Yes.
get involved and stay involved and ask questions. And it sounds like you've now taught him how to do that. Graham, would you feel she's done a pretty good job teaching that to you?
Interesting to great. I'm still in a work of progress, but it's definitely working.
Hey, aren't we all? I think we're all a
Oh.
work in progress. But I think that that is important advice, especially as children grow and they get into those secondary years. The teachers don't have the same kind of, how do I want to say this? Secondary teachers are just a little bit different, right? They're just approach everything a little different. They don't make those call every parent at least once a week kind of
Oh.
things. And especially in big districts. I'm in a big district as well, or I have been. I've been in little districts in the Houston area, but my daughter graduated with 2,000 students also. So we live within a community with very big high schools. And it can be overwhelming. We had a setup back in the day very similar to what you're explaining in her school with the houses and the
Yes, that's
smaller
exactly what we
pods.
have.
Yes. And that makes it so much more doable. So for families out there, you know, hopefully if you're within a large school system, you have something structured like that, or maybe you can find a school that's structured. And then of course, if you're blessed enough, I grew up in a small town where I graduated with 200 kids. So, you know, it was a whole lot easier to navigate with that amount of students. But it sounds like you guys are doing a great job. So I have one last question for y'all before we wrap up today. And Graham, this one is for you. What
Alright.
are you looking forward to the most being a senior in high school next year?
Well, I mean, I know a bunch of seniors nowadays. Like I have some friends that are, and honestly, I kind of dread it a little bit because of the workload it could have. But I'm guessing looking forward to getting classes like, I guess, to help me understand a little bit more, or at least the public one. Like there's 2 classes within it that I've been waiting to take for a while. One was psychology and the other was sociology. So how people work internally and how people work externally. So I was a little interested in that concept.
Yeah.
But I guess for senior year, it's to finally apply some of the stuff I've been building up for a few years.
I love
And
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Molly, you're going to wrap us up today. What are
Okay.
you looking forward to the most about Graham finishing up secondary school and getting ready to go on into the world?
Man.
Because he's
Graduation.
thriving. He's thriving.
Yes, no question, no
Absolutely.
question. I mean, the sky's the limit for Graham. I truly believe that. I'm gonna savor every minute. Not only is he my last kiddo going through high school, but we've been on such a journey for so many years, right? And I get tears on my eyes thinking like he was the kid underneath the table in the kindergarten class who didn't want to sit on the circle for circle time, right? And this is the kid, you don't remember that probably. But he's come so far, and so it's gonna be an emotional year for me, I think. But to see him walk across that stage at graduation is gonna be just it's gonna be a great mom moment for me, I think. So I am, I'm so proud of everything that he's done. Really, honestly, I am. You blow me away. But to see him graduate and with, wonderful grades and just a good head on his shoulders, and, that's going to be good. So I'm looking forward to it. So.
Perfect. That's such a huge milestone and a perfect way to end our conversation today. Graham and Molly, thank you for joining me. And Graham, I'm going to keep a watch out for you and see all the great things you do in the future. Okay.
all right, I'll try my best with it.
I know you will. I think your mom will make sure you do too. She'll give you a little nudge, but you keep mom in line too. Okay. All right. Thank you, both of you, for joining me today. And this has been an amazing conversation.
Okay.
Hey there, Amelia. How are you doing today?
Doing all right. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for joining me today. And I know that you have a lot of great information for our audience As you joined our project, I've gotten to learn a little bit about you, and I know your mom, and we've had a few conversations, but I'm really excited that you've agreed to come on board and talk to our audience about your experiences as someone who is on the spectrum.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of this as well.
Good, 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 good. So let's go ahead and get started. Why don't you start by just introducing yourself to our audience? I know you had your introduction video, but just how you kind of got to this place here today, and what all of this means for you moving forward.
Well, for those who don't know, my name is Amelia Dunaway. I'm autistic. I'm a student at Texas A&M, and I'm majoring right now in behavioral cognitive neuroscience. And so for this project, it really means a lot to me because my special interest is in autism. And one aspect of my special interest, it involves, sharing that with other people. I love talking about autism to other people. And so educating others, even though I don't necessarily want to be a teacher, is a fun little pastime of mine. So when I saw this project coming up, when my mom mentioned it, I was like, yeah, I want to get involved, and I wanted to share my very, I would say, unique experiences, just throughout like high school and stuff, getting diagnosed and all that.
Well, perfect. And I know you are one of the best people to come on board here today because your journey has been pretty unique. You were in the school systems, COVID hit, you were homeschooled, you've had a different kind of path maybe than some of our other typical thinking kind of people. But most importantly, when you got back into school, middle school, high school age, that's when you started to notice that maybe something was kind of not going along quite as you would want it to go along. Not that you had super bad experiences, but I know talking to your mom, you guys could tell that there were some differences out there in the world. So talk to me a little bit. We know that high school, middle school, first off, middle school, everybody loses their minds, right? So it's really hard to tell what's going on with children at that age. I always say elementary is a great place that you can start to notice differences, and then probably high school, because those are the two ends of your educational journey. But I know when you got into high school, things started to become a little more challenging. And talk to me a little bit about that experience.
So middle school was rough because of course it was. It is for everyone, like you said. But going into high school was very unique. I think middle school usually is very small. There's not a whole lot of kids there, but going into high school, even if you go to a small high school, you're upsizing the amount of kids that go there. And so I think it's just easier to be able to compare like yourself to another person in a way, like, and see that there's something different there versus a smaller school where, there's not really as big of a sample size. Um, and so going into high school, I noticed I was different, but I like just thought I wasn't like all the other girls, I'm not like other girls, that whole thing. And I don't know, I was 14 and um I made friends who were also definitely autistic, but I, was doing okay in freshman year, before COVID hit. I was fine in academics, I made a few friends, that were definitely autistic, and but I never really just connected with people who weren't autistic. Maybe no, not even one or two. I just didn't. It just didn't occur to me that um there was a connection that was supposed to be there. I got bullied a little bit. It wasn't too bad. It was just mostly picking on me. I'm not that big of a deal to me personally. Because I didn't get hurt or anything crazy. But um I mean, I knew that I also had some issues because even though I was good academically, like I had spots in my academics where I was unreasonably bad at, and it was usually things that required some form of common sense or like common sense. Yeah, I think just common sense. And so like inference was really hard for me. And I thought, I mean, I was in honors English at the time, so I just thought, I would develop these skills as I went on. Well, then COVID hit and we all got shut down. I got basically moved to a new school, it was online. And all that social progress that I was not really making kind of grinded to a halt. And so I think what COVID did was it really exaggerated all of the little quote unquote problems that were happening. Um, I think that it did that for all of us because I mean, social isolation makes you go a little crazy. And so COVID was just this big catalyst for, my lack of social skills. Because I could get by, but only if someone else was willing to like accept that, I was a little quirky and that I didn't necessarily always make eye contact, or I talked for 30 minutes to an hour uninterrupted about something I was super interested in. And they just, nodded along and, we're, so I was good friends with like good listeners. But I was never really good friends with anyone else. And so once COVID kind of started, you know, waning and, we could kind of, get out and about and everything. So before my junior year, before I actually went into my junior year, I went back to the same school I was at. Um, Before then, for some reason, like, I don't, excuse me. No, actually, I do know what gave it away. So, you know how in the pandemic when you just like sat at home and like watched movies and TV shows and stuff like that and binge watched and stuff. Well, I got into new series and I got into new TV shows and continued watching Criminal Minds, which is one of my favorites. But I got into the show called The Good Doctor, and it was about this autistic doctor who was kind of this genius archetype, which isn't all that accurate. But uh, the way they portrayed him being autistic, I watched this one scene of him having like a meltdown in like the back of a room or something. I don't remember where it was, but and I felt seen almost. And it was a weird feeling because I didn't act like that, quote unquote, but I felt like that. Like that is the like I understood this character at a level I didn't realize I understood him at. And I've always loved autistic characters or autistic coded characters because I've always felt like I understood them more than I understood the insanities of the other characters. And I always felt so grounded with them. And so I mentioned this to my mom, and she dismissed it as like, oh no, you're not autistic. It's just he's just an outcast, and you relate to the outcast because you're one of them. Nicely, she wasn't being mean. And so I was like, okay, um, sure. I mean, I trusted what she said at the time, and what ended up happening was I delved a bit more into social media because that's another coping mechanism you have over COVID. And I started getting a lot of like autism media on my social media and stuff. And I was relating to it more and more and more. And I was like, maybe we should just look into this a little bit because this is a little too relatable. And I went to my therapist, and my therapist was like, your mom mentioned this to me like the other day, and apparently we had gone to the therapist at the same time. And so I got diagnosed officially, like we got the papers back. I think it was in November of that year, like when my junior year was. And so after getting diagnosed, it was very interesting because like I'm very self-aware, and so I was actually aware of what I was doing and what it was called and like how much like how I behaved and how that connected with the way my brain worked. And so I believe that getting diagnosed was really great for me It could definitely affect things in my future, but I'm not going to worry about that right now because I'm in college and I don't have to worry about that right now. And but I
Absolutely.
think at the time it was great because I got accommodations at that school
Mhm.
at a 504, and it was like that school was wonderful with accommodations, like wonderful, wonderful. And I realized these areas where I had felt so frustrated because I felt like there was a physical barrier almost blocking me with the accommodations. Like I could do what I needed to do. I could do inference with some accommodations, and I could do like creative writing. I mean, I love to write, don't get me wrong, but like for assignments, if it was too vague, like I couldn't do it. And now that I had the scaffolding I needed, I could do it. And um the teachers were wonderful with my accommodations and like with understanding that I was autistic, and it was just great. I moved my senior year to Texas, to the great land of Texas. And they weren't so great with the accommodations my senior year, but the teachers were still amazing. So it wasn't a super big deal. And I continued just making friends with a lot of autistic people. I made a few neurotypical friends, but honestly, that's few and far between. Um, and so coming into college was definitely going to be difficult, I think, because I didn't know what that was going to look like for me. You know what I mean? Like, what is that? My parents never went to college. My mom got married at 18. Like, they have no experience of this. I have no experience of this. I'm the first child in my family to go off to the university for a few generations back. And so, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm going after neuroscience of all things. Like that's not your, no offense to theater majors, but like that's not your theater major or your like that's not exactly, I mean, it's not engineering, but it's not an easy major to do. And so like um I think the transition has been hard, but I wasn't super anxious, but I definitely was nervous about like how this was going to go. You know what I mean?
Well, and Amelia, I have to say, listening to you share your story today, you mentioned you're very self-aware, and I can see that. And I think that that is always going to be a positive for you. Thinking from the educator standpoint, kids that we see grow up and become very aware of what works for them and what doesn't work for them usually become adults that know what works for them and what doesn't work for them.
Mhm.
I think that you have all rights to feel a little bit anxious about what the future might hold, because I think we all do when we start
Oh
college.
yeah.
I was in teacher college and I felt that way back in the day. However, I do think that you have an amazing road ahead of you. And what I love hearing about is the fact that you knew something was going on, that you found your tribe, so to speak. You found people that could
Yeah.
resonate with you, that made you feel, because I truly believe this, we're all unique in different ways, right? And your uniqueness doesn't make you a good or a bad person. It makes you Amelia. And I think once you felt that, it sounds like you really were able to take it and really run with it and thrive.
Mhm.
And so I look forward to having you back on the next episode, where we talk about college and what happens beyond that, because I think you're going to be a great resource for those out there that are starting to get to that last year of high school, right? And starting to think about what's next, and what
Yeah.
if I am the first person to ever do this and nobody understands it, or what if I go without my safety net? All things that we all feel, but could feel more exaggerated for those on the spectrum. And so thank you for joining me. I know you are going to be amazing, and I can't wait to see how your future turns out, because you're on my team now. I'm always going to check in on you. All right. Thank you, Amelia. Well, there you have it, everyone. What a great episode, don't you think? I know that this journey is one of those that I'm excited about sharing out to the world because I didn't tell you is that because of some of the work that we've been doing, people have been reaching out and asking questions and just giving us feedback. And that's what this is all about. Just being able to help one person. That's all, one person. However, if you're watching and you are enjoying this information, that you find it helpful, would you do me a favor and share it out? Because we can only reach our reach together, right? But if we all collectively put our minds to it, think about how many people this could get into the hands of. Somewhere on the spectrum, once again, is something that just makes my heart happy. And I hope that you find that to be the same. And as we go into our next episode next week, we're going to talk about what happens after we leave the protection of public education. What happens when we graduate? What happens out there in the world when we may be at a place where we need to leave our childhood home? We're going to start having those conversations and get real about what supports are out there, what supports aren't out there, and maybe we'll even dig into some of the costs of some of those supports because that's real. Our families that are working through the spectrum have to deal with that each and every day. And I know it's something that presents hurdles and challenges in our minds that overwhelms us at times. So next week, right back here on Somewhere on the Spectrum, Navigating the World of Autism, we are going to dig into the life of young adults and what happens when they leave the protection of public schools.